Kyle in Texas has a weird theory about auras. Pronouns are he, him. Welcome, Kyle. How you doing?
I'm all right, Matt. Thanks for having me on. Sorry, I was laughing at the last guy. So
You're the only one.
Real quick. Sorry. Real quick, my theory is that so the way that I was originally introduced to the idea of auras was that you would look at someone and you would see a color or a pattern or a light that more or less, I wouldn't say represented their mood, but, kind of was an indication of a mood or a disposition, if that makes sense. And not too long ago, I learned about something, and I'm probably going to pronounce it wrong because I've never heard it spoken out loud, but I think it's called synesthesia, which is where you see colors or patterns on music or smells. And I was wondering if that was a plausible explanation for seeing auras and what y'all thought about that.
I don't know. And here's why. Synesthesia takes on a variety of forms, and I have zero expertise. I've read about it and studied it. I've listened to V.S. Ramachandran talk about it and others. I believe it was Ramachandran that was talking about it. I don't know enough to say for sure that you have a potentially plausible explanation for people who claim to see auras. But of the potential explanations I've heard, I think that one seems fairly plausible. It's just that what happens if you have someone who can't possibly be, or hasn't been diagnosed and couldn't be diagnosed with synesthesia based only on their possibility of seeing auras. So I don't know how do you know more about it, Mike?
Not really. I mean, I'm kind of weirded out just to with the fact that that's a subjective experience that someone has, how I have access to knowing the aura thing in conjunction with that. There was something I read when I saw your call come in, I just kind of glanced at some stuff, and there is a study you can look up. I don't know the merits of it, but there is something that talks about phenomenal connection between auras and synesthesia. But I just find a lot of that to be not the synesthesia, but the aura thing. I don't need that to explain that in the world that I live in, right? Illness works on a molecular level. We have a pretty good grasp on how a lot of these things work, and at no point has invoking auras benefited our predictions ever. And so it seems to be some chakra type of nonsense to me. So I just don't know why someone would accept it absent a good reason.
Yeah, I know we can go through and kind of diagnose synesthesia in some aspects where somebody can say they visualize numbers as colors and or sounds, and all you need to do to demonstrate that their subjective experience is at least as represented is show that it's consistent and internally consistent, which is not a robust epistemology for determining what the actual truth is, but to show that somebody can consistently demonstrate this, test them at different times, and let's, change the way the numbers and things look and everything else. But it's such a broad and really confusing aspect of our minds that I don't know. Here's something to kind of, I don't know where you're at, Kyle, but what if the people who report seeing auras actually don't have a version of synesthesia, but have some other mental aberration, or are just engaged in a weird kind of self-deception? Because I'll tell you this, we know people who have engaged in the sort of psychic medium stuff, even if they start off knowing that they are frauds. Some of them have gotten so good at essentially the cold reading aspect of it that they managed to convince themselves that there may be some truth there. And it's the same thing with, tarot cards and other things. Like bits of cardboard have no insight for anybody. The cardboard doesn't know what's printed on it. The universe doesn't care what's printed on it. And so the Ace of Cups and the Death card are fundamentally identical. And yet people see what they want to see. I wonder, and there was a weird thing that happened to me when I was a kid. We were laying out on a trampoline, and in order to show off for our friends, somebody suggested, it's like, wow, I wonder if there were drugs in those brownies or Kool-Aid or whatever it was we had eaten. And there clearly wasn't. None of us were high. Nobody around us had access to any drugs or anything else. But because of that suggestion, we pondered it. And while we were laying there on the trampoline, it looked like the moon was moving, or somebody claimed that it looked like the moon was moving. And then the rest of us reported that we saw the moon moving as well. I don't recall, because I was a little kid, whether or not I actually saw the moon moving, or whether I was saying I saw the moon moving, or whatever else. We have on standby in the back, student Dr. Ben, who was going to fill in if anything went wrong. Thumbs up or thumbs down, since we don't want to necessarily pull a third in right now. Where are you on the likelihood of synesthesia as a possible explanation for people seeing auras? If Ben's doing this. It's so I find it interesting, Kyle, and I think it's an interesting speculation that somebody should perhaps set up a test to see, okay, for the people who can reportedly see auras, one, can they do what they say they can do? And two, what might be the causes of that? Because one of the things that the James Randi Educational Foundation did for years with its $1 million prize was, if you can demonstrate the phenomenon, not necessarily the how, but if you can demonstrate the phenomenon, you could get $1 million. And so anybody who can consistently show that they could read auras, I don't know how you test for it other than, like Mike was talking about, this self-reported aspect.
Yeah, and I just want to preface, my criticism isn't on synesthesia as much. I think maybe some people might take that the wrong way. It's just this idea of auras. It seems like there's no, I guess to what Matt's saying, I don't know that there's a there, like, and how we discover that in the first place is kind of where I'm really skeptical of, like, what that looks like, and it seems like an unfalsifiable position to me.
Yeah, I did miss out on one thing that I had forgotten about, was that it was the theory would be based off of all the unspoken things that people, do when they're like, posture and facial expressions. They're supposed to be like most of what a conversation is. And I was just thinking about social evolution and how, like, we've evolved all these various different things to help ourselves, like, understand what someone that we're talking to feels like, or where their emotions are at. And if this was, for some people, it's just a conscious thing. I'm picking up that, this guy's about to be angry with me. And then for other people, it was this, I see red or something. But, and also,
yeah, it's interesting. And there are colors.
The live stream on.
Yeah, there are colors that we've attributed to emotions, like green for jealousy and red for anger. And
like red is a trumpet. I've heard that.
I don't know enough. Red's for what?
Like red, like the sound of a trumpet is like what red. Like, I've heard people make that type of, like, when I think of red, I think of the sound of a trumpet. I've never understood that. So maybe I just have this complete disconnect there. But
well, there's a further disconnect, because if you start talking to people who are big into music, they will start describing certain things as, like major chords are happy and minor chords are sad.
Sure.
Which I'm okay with that. I can get where we're conveying a certain mood. But when they start going on to the flavor of voices and this intonation and they lose me at some point. And maybe I'm the weird one. I'll fully acknowledge that. But this sort of like subjective, let me describe the experience of listening to this, approaches like qualia levels of rejection for me. But I don't really know, Kyle. I think that's about as good of an answer as we can get for you, but it'd be interesting if somebody dug into it a little deeper and maybe email a neuroscientist.
Okay. Well, thank you very much.
Cheers. Thanks, Kyle.
Thanks. It was
All
an
right.
interesting topic. I don't ever have people call in about that. So
Yeah. It's one of those things that's interesting enough. I'm probably going to spend quite a bit of time thinking about it this week. Like, what can I tie this to? Is there a way to do it?